I'm Dr. John Dabach, and I answer your relationship questions. Let's get right into the email. Dear John, I found out my husband has been secretly talking to his ex for years, not casual check-ins, but emotional conversations about our marriage, and even things I've told him in confidence. He says she understands him better, but I feel replaced in my own relationship. Is this worse than physical cheating? Erica in San Jose, California. Erica, you're asking the wrong question, not just because it's a bad question, it's not a bad question, but because it pulls you into a comparison that actually distracts from what's right in front of you. Whether this is worse than physical cheating doesn't change the fact that what you're describing is already a full-blown betrayal. This is not borderline, it's not ambiguous, it's not something that sits in a gray area. This is an emotional affair. And it's been happening for years, behind your back, involving someone he has real history with. That combination matters because secrecy plus emotional intimacy plus a former partner, that's not accidental. It's not an oopsie. It's intentional and it's sustained. And that's why it lands the way it does, because it's not just that he's been talking to someone else. It's that he's been building a parallel emotional connection while still being in a marriage with you. Now let's address the comparison you're making, because people get stuck here all the time, trying to rank betrayals as if they somehow will make sense of that. It makes it easier to process. Some people will tell you emotional affairs are worse because they involve deeper connection. Others will say physical affairs are worse because they cross a very clear boundary. And the truth is, both can be incredibly damaging, but they're damaging in different ways. Physical affairs, not always, but often feel like a shock, a clear rupture, something that you can point to and say, that should not have happened, right? Emotional affairs tend to be quieter, more gradual. They build over time. And by the time they're discovered, there's already a level of intimacy and reliance that makes them feel just as threatening, if not more confusing, because it's not one moment, it's a pattern. And what you're dealing with is a pattern, a long-term one. And that's what makes this so significant. Not just what happened, but how long it's been happening and how much of your relationship it has quietly coexisted with. Now let's get into the part that actually is cutting you the deepest, because it's right there in what you wrote. He says she understands him better. That statement is doing a lot of damage, not just because of what it implies about her, but because of what it implies about you. It positions you as someone who doesn't get him, who isn't enough in that space. And it elevates her into a role that should belong inside the marriage. And that's why you feel replaced, because in a very real sense, I hate saying this, but you were, not physically, but emotionally. An emotional replacement hits in a way that is very hard to shake, because it makes you question your connection, your role, and your value in the relationship. Now, here's where I'm going to redirect you, because that statement, she understands me better, that sounds like a truth claim, but it's actually a function of access, not superiority. She understands him better because she's been given access to parts of him that should have been shared with you. She's been in conversations that were hidden from you. She's been positioned as the confidant, the sounding board, the emotional outlet. And when you give someone that role consistently over time, of course they're going to feel like they understand you more. That's not because they're better suited for you. It's because they've been given the opportunity and you have not. So don't internalize that as there's something she has that I don't. That's not the right frame. What she has is access, and that is what you were denied. You were denied that. You were denied the transparency. Okay, let's make that very clear. And those are two very different things. Now let's talk about the confidentiality piece that you mentioned in your email, because this is where the betrayal really deepens even further. He didn't just talk to her. He talked to her about your marriage, about your struggles, about things you told him in confidence. That's a breach on multiple levels. It's not just about him seeking support. It's about him outsourcing the emotional processing of your relationship to someone outside of it. And in doing that, he's eroding the trust that allows you to feel safe sharing with him in the first place. Because now the question becomes, if I tell you something vulnerable, is it really staying between us? Or is it being filtered through someone else? And once that question enters the relationship, it changes how you communicate. It creates hesitation. It creates guardedness. It's not a small issue. That's foundational because intimacy relies on the belief that what you share is held with care, not redirected somewhere else without your knowledge. Now, let's come back to what you do with this because this is where people either get clarity or get stuck. The first thing is you don't allow this to be minimized or reframed into something harmless. This is not just talking. It's not just emotional support. It's not just an old connection. This is an ongoing emotional affair. And if you let it be framed as anything else, you're going to be negotiating from a place that doesn't match the reality of what happened. The second thing is you need a clear end to the behavior, not a reduction. Not a "we'll keep it appropriate," not "I'll tone it down." A clear, boom, end, finish line, it's over. No more private conversations with this person. No more emotional reliance. No more contact that bypasses the marriage. Because as long as that connection exists, even in a limited form, it continues to compete with the relationship you're trying to repair. And repair can't happen while a parallel connection is still active. Now, here's another piece that matters, and it's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's really necessary. He needs to take responsibility not just for the behavior, but for the impact it had on you. Because if he stays in a place of "she understands me better" or "I need someone to talk to," he's still justifying it. And as long as it's justified, it's at risk of continuing. That's why people justify, because they want to keep doing it, at least most of the time. What you're looking for is ownership. This crossed the line. This hurt you. This damaged the relationship, and I understand why. That's what it sounds like. That's what you want. Because without that, any change is going to be surface level and temporary. Now, let's address the part where you feel replaced, because that feeling doesn't go away just because the behavior stops. That feeling gets repaired through consistent, visible effort inside the relationship. That means he needs to start bringing those conversations back to you, not in a forced or performative way, but in a real way, where you become the person he turns to, the person he processes with, the person he trusts with his internal world. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, through consistency, through transparency, through a willingness to rebuild what was redirected elsewhere. And here's the reality you have to sit with. Not every relationship recovers from this. Not because it's impossible, it's really not, but because it requires a level of accountability and change that not everyone is really willing to commit to. So you're not just deciding whether this is worse than physical cheating. You're deciding whether this is something that can be repaired based on how he shows up and how he shows up now. Okay, the past is the past. It's done. What matters is what he does with it moving forward. And that's what you watch. Not his words, not his explanations, but his behavior, his boundaries, his consistency over time. Because that's what will tell you whether this relationship can be rebuilt into something that feels safe and real again. Hope that helps. If you have a question you want me to answer, there are directions in the description below on how to submit it for my team and me to consider for the show. And don't forget to like and subscribe.